What's up, guys? Welcome to this edition of A Funko Popcast. I'm DK Wrestler.
And I'm MD Shaddy.
And in today's podcast, it is our yearly tradition of the best and worst of the year. We've done this podcast, I want to say now this is the 4th or 5th year, I can't exactly remember, but we actually did recently announce on the channel that at the end of the year, we actually are going to be finishing off the podcast. It will officially be coming to an end, so this will be the last best and worst podcast that we do here on the channel. And I guess before we actually start off this podcast, I want to get your thoughts, MD, of A Funko Popcast coming to an end after being on the air for almost 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bittersweet, but I think it makes sense. I feel like with that long of content and you're not getting to see our gorgeous faces on the screen, that the long form content and the shorts definitely perform a lot better. So it just makes sense to take this route.
But nonetheless, for those that are new and maybe viewing the best and worst for the first time, for this specific podcast, we have, as said, the best and worst of various different categories. We got 10 different categories. We're going to name off what we feel is the worst and what is the best. And so, MD, are you ready for the final best and worst podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. This one should be a fun one.
All right, so we're going to kick off with the very first category for the best and worst of 2024. It is new pop lineup and series, a category that gets very difficult every year because there's not a lot of new things. We would have to base it off of, let's say, different movies that are coming out in theaters or different video games for that matter. And so I guess I'll go first and then MD will go right after. So I'm going to start off what I feel would be the worst new pop lineup and series, and I gotta go with those damn chocolate pops. I think that's a terrible idea, of course. There is the Valentine set that came out with the Star Wars pops, and then there was the Easter ones that they had, where basically you had like the tinfoil wrapping as the outfit, and then you had maybe even a bite taking out of one of the heads for the Easter ones, like TMNT, and there were some Marvel ones, and I believe there was also some Disney ones with like Mickey and Minnie, and I hope that we do not get this when it comes to 2025. And then for the best new pop lineup and series, I put down Funko Fusion. I thought that that was a pretty solid set. Yes, of course, there was the abundance of, let's say, like the Eddified specification, I guess you would call it, especially with the recent New York Comic Con exclusive limited piece counts, but I think that's what gets it a pass for those specific Eddified pops. But that first wave with, like, you know, Masters of the Universe, all the other licensors involved, both either current lineups or even sets that we haven't gotten pops in a long time, like Shaun of the Dead, and there was also for the first time ever, I believe, The Thing and Megan. So that's pretty cool that those got debuted into Funko Pop form through this set with the licensing involved with Funko Fusion. There wasn't really entirely like a bad pop, in my opinion, for those sets.
All right, so starting off with the worst new lineup, in my opinion, it's not really a lineup, it's more of like a specification, but when you group them all together, they are terrible, and that is the soft color pops. Unbelievable. I thought that like Pearlescent was ridiculous, and of course, like we thought some of like the flocked Pokemon that didn't make sense to be flocked was weird a few years back, but now soft color is bogus. It's quite literally the exact same pop, but it looks like you just stuck it in your window over the summer, and now that's what it looks like. Oh, it's so similar. Like, you could barely tell that there's any difference between that soft color Bulbasaur and the regular one that we got years ago. So yeah, soft color is ridiculous. And then moving on to the best new lineup, in my opinion, and this one was very easy for me. I instantly thought of this lineup when I thought of brand new lineups, and that is Goosebumps. What a great wave this was. Hopefully we do see some more pops in the future, maybe just as con exclusives, but starting off with the first wave, I thought it was really, really great with the Night of the Living Dummy, as well as the Haunted Mask. The hair, that was really cool as well. And then we even got a Blacklight pop thrown in there with the Haunted Mask, which is a pretty solid pop. I ended up going for the regular version, but I wouldn't doubt anybody would want to get that Blacklight one because it looks pretty sweet as well.
The next category we have is current pop lineup and series. Of course, this was much easier because, of course, even if something was new last year, it makes it current this year. For the worst, I had to put the 8-bit pops. I think it was an unnecessary set of pops that should have been left back in 2018 when they made an abundance of them, and then they ditched them by the time we made it to either 2019 or 2020. There were some that like were okay. Like, I didn't mind those NBA Jam pops pops that they did where it was like kind of 8-bit, but not at the same time. And then they did a few for Sonic the Hedgehog that I thought was okay. It made sense because, of course, it's a video game, so a lot of those games back in the day would have been either 8-bit or maybe even Sonic technically wouldn't make sense because I think it was like 32-bit, like it got more advanced at that point. But there was a lot that just didn't make sense. A huge example were like the Marvel 8-bit pops, whether it's for like X-Men 97 or like the current pops they're releasing like every week, I believe, for like Target Fridays. So there's just a lot of 8-bit pops that just don't make sense in 2024, and I hope we don't get even more of abundance of them in 2025 like we've seen this year. And the best lineup, this was difficult because there was a lot of different series that could have made it. I mean, I could have put SpongeBob because, 25th anniversary, they had really cool different SpongeBobs, but I think that was the reason why I didn't choose that, because there was just a lot of SpongeBob and not a lot of other characters. Of course, the Muppets made a return this year, and same with Sesame Street. And I also could have went with One Piece, which was my pick for, I believe, last year and maybe the year before, but that's not my pick this year. This year, I went with Shrek, which made its return this year because of, I believe it was DreamWorks' 30th anniversary, and there was a total of, I believe, 8 pops, if I'm not mistaken, because the Common Wave had 5 pops, and then there was like 3 exclusives, I believe, with like the Puss in Boots exclusive to Amazon, the Scary Face Shrek, and then the Donkey with Waffles exclusive to Box Lunch. I thought they were all pretty solid pops for the most part, only being 8 pops instead of like a usual like 20 pop wave or whatever. I thought just those 8 and all of them are pretty unique, especially the Shrek and Fiona that actually go well together because they're holding like the animal balloons. So I think that was pretty sweet.
So for my current lineups of 2024, the worst goes to the 8-bit pops as well. 8-bit is just ridiculous. It kind of always has been. There's only a small select group of pops out of the 8-bit lineup that get a pass, and those are like Jason Voorhees that they made. That made sense because it was for an 8-bit game. Space Invaders, those were technically 8-bit pops, which they weren't really even 8-bit pops. They're a lot different, but those also get a pass because those were some pretty dang cool pop. But then you get things like, of course, like the Captain America and the Marvel this year, which is just, it doesn't make any sense. In the past years as well, like it really never made any sense for the most part. And one big thing with the 8-bit pops as well is that they're so damn heavy because they're not hollow in the head like a normal Funko Pop is. If some person goes and finds an 8-bit pop at a store and you're holding it in your hand looking at it and you drop it, it's so heavy that that box is going to be crushed. Whereas with a normal pop, if you drop it, you have a chance of the box not really taking any damage. So that's another thing that I took into consideration. The 8-bit pops are just trash, and hopefully we don't see very many more of them unless it makes sense. And then going on to the best current lineup, I went with the SpongeBob lineup. I thought that it was very, very well done. One thing I'm going to say first before I get into the nitty gritty of it is that I wish we would have seen more. There's been stuff that I've been wanting in Funko Pop form from SpongeBob for years now, and we still haven't got some of these characters. Yes, there was an abundance of SpongeBob himself, but they were all pretty dang good, and they were all from very iconic or meme moments. Of course, you have the head out SpongeBob, the SpongeBob with suds, the mocking SpongeBob, which is hilarious. Doodle Bob was amazing to finally get Doodle Bob. So cool. But overall, I think that they just picked a lot of really good moments that SpongeBob has had throughout the years. I guess it's the 25th anniversary this year. That's really cool. I like the set. I think it could have been better, but I also think, in my opinion, it was the best.
The next category is retailer exclusives. So basically we look at the different retailers that obviously have exclusives. So example, let's say GameStop, your local Target, the Funko Shop even, counting as a retailer that would usually release an abundance of Funko Pop exclusives. I did take to consideration to not include, let's say, those retailers that only get like a couple exclusives a year to be like the worst, because that just isn't really fair. And maybe those 3 might actually be better than a lot of the retailers that could have an abundance, including what I have listed as the worst retailer with exclusives this year, which I believe I voted this last year. Also, it's got to be Target. Target is doing the same thing as they did last year, where there's too many blacklight pops. They were a huge component of the 8-bit pops like we talked about just a bit ago. There's the 10-inch pops that are pointless, especially getting the 10-inch pops still of Pokemon that already have 4-inch pops. The comic covers, did I mention blacklight? Blacklight. I don't exactly remember, but if I didn't, Blacklight pops. They just have a lot of unnecessary pops, and I feel like soon Target will go down the same route as Walmart, where they just stop selling pops because it's just pointless exclusives. They have an overabundance of them, and all of them, no matter even the best exclusive that they could have, ends up going on clearance at some point because they got too much of unnecessary stuff. So yeah, I definitely think for a second year in a row, I believe I voted it as, is Target as the worst retailer exclusive. And then the best, surprisingly enough, I voted, I believe, GameStop for the last 2 or 3 years. GameStop is not the best retailer in my opinion this year. It was very close, but this one actually surprised me, and it's mostly because of stuff that I collect of why I voted as the best, and that is Fanatics, which it's funny because MD and I had a little conversation before recording this podcast about those Santa Claus pops that are exclusive to Fanatics, where it's Santa Claus with the different NFL teams, and then they did the recently released set this year of the NBA teams, which there weren't all the NBA teams like they did with the NFL ones, but there were still a few of them. But I put Fanatics also because you still had that cool idea of the championship multi-packs. They did that with the Kansas City Chiefs for the NFL, and I believe they did that this year with whoever won the World Series for MLB. I could be wrong. I am a little ticked off they didn't do an NHL championship pop this year. I think that was a little But then also, I think the big highlight for me is WWE pops being Fanatics exclusives, and a lot of them being either brand new or just revamps that are so much better of wrestlers that have already had pops. Examples I put down: the Usos 2-pack with the white attire, which I think is better than the normal one. The Hollywood Hulk Hogan, which was pretty sweet, in case you couldn't get the one that was a 2K15 exclusive. Umaga being a pop for the very first time was absolutely awesome. And then the not really brand new, but the Hall of Fame pops. And we had revamps of both Kane and The Undertaker, which that Kane is absolutely a pop, where I do have the original version of that version of Kane that was a Walgreens exclusive, but I am really considering selling that one to get this version because I think they did such a great job with that, and especially with that gorgeous Hall of Fame box. And then even The Undertaker, where it's almost a revamp of the OG pop, which if you never got that OG pop, you can get this one now, and I'm still going to get that because I have a complete Undertaker set of pops. Yeah, surprisingly enough, this year, and perhaps maybe the only year, that Fanatics, in my opinion, is the best. And yes, like I mentioned about those Santa Claus pops, but I didn't take those into consideration because after really looking at them, I do like how they made different posings with half of the Santa Claus pops, especially with, I didn't even realize, when Santa Claus is throwing the football, it's actually a present, which I think is pretty funny.
All right, so for retailers, for me, starting off with the worst, I went with Walmart. I think I also went with Walmart last year, if I'm remembering correctly, but it's just so bad. Walmart, it just seems it gets worse. And the thing is that Walmart could be one of the best retailers. It's such a big box store that you'd think that they would be packed with pops and being able to sell them, but it seems like every single Walmart I go to in Canada or the US just has nothing, and this section is full of pops that are put on clearance because they're broken inside of the box, which is just ridiculous. I get it, like they need to make up some of the money, but that's when, especially with Walmart, you should start sending some of that product over to the third-party companies. Yeah, there was not very many exclusives this year for Walmart either, which makes sense because of how ridiculous it's been. But then they also get weird exclusives like the ornaments, which is fine because I personally think they're cool, but it just seems so weird that they get Walmart exclusive ornaments, but they can't get actual Funko Pops and never have them in stock anyways. And then for the best, I went with GameStop again because it's just the easiest for us. And for most of the time with like shared con exclusives, most of the stuff that I want ends up going to GameStop. So that's really good for me. Pre-ordering is amazing. You can pre-order pops at GameStop in Canada and not even have to put a down payment on them. You just, once they get them, that's when you pay. So I think always the best retailer will be GameStop, but who knows because things happen.
The next category is convention. We're talking the convention overall with the different Funko Pops that have released, which the eligible conventions we have on this list would be C2E2 that happened, I believe, in April or March. I can't exactly remember. There was San Diego Comic-Con in July, D23 in August, New York Comic-Con in October, and then recently FunCon, even though I don't think that was actually a convention, but there were like convention exclusives, and it does feel more like a con than, let's say, Target Con or Hot Topic Scare Fair, which is like an overrated convention for a specific retailer. For the worst convention, I had to put D23. This was such an abomination of a convention. There's no way around it. There was like 6 exclusives, which already, like, I don't mind that there was like a low amount of exclusives, but like when all 6 for the most part, besides maybe the Bob Gurr 3000 piece pop, are like ridiculously bad. Bullseye Captain America, that was just a pre-release exclusive. It ended up going to Target later. There is the multi-packs that are just like metallic specification, like the Luke and Darth Vader, the Luca 2-pack, which makes no sense at all, and even the Sorcerer Mickey and Chernobog 2-pack. These comic book sketching Venom and Spider-Man were okay, but yeah, that had to be the worst by far. But I will mention, if we are toning it down to like the big 3 conventions, I would say San Diego Comic-Con. But the best convention overall, I actually am giving it to the underdog of Comic-Cons, being C2E2. Everyone always wants to vote for like San Diego Comic-Con because it's regarded as like the biggest convention of the year, and then New York Comic-Con because usually a lot of great pops get released for New York Comic-Con, which yes, this year New York Comic-Con had a banger selection of pops. However, I just feel that with C2E2, even though there was only like maybe 20 at most, I feel like for one pop in the Marvel lineup was way better than the whole selection of Marvel pops for both San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con. You can even say the same thing with like Disney, where the only Disney pop for C2E2 was that Woody and Buzz Lightyear 2-pack from Toy Story, while for New York Comic-Con we had Mr. Toad, which wasn't entirely the greatest. And then San Diego Comic-Con, I mean, you did have like, let's say, the Xenon pop that was like 4,000 pieces and the Edna from The Incredibles, but that was just kind of underwhelming. While that one pop, the whole saying of less is more, I feel like is what defines C2E2, where they may only have one pop for a certain category, but that one pop for the most part is probably better than the abundance of pops for the categories we've seen from the other conventions this year. So I can finally say, after so many years, that I can vote on the underdog convention of being the best convention this year, being C2E2.
So for me, the worst convention of the year was also D23. I mean, that is terrible. There's not really anything too great, and it makes sense. It's not one of those cons that you really expect to get something amazing from, but what we got was like pretty garbage. Like, I would say 95% of it is not good. So yeah, definitely have to take that into consideration, and DK explained it very well. And then moving on to the best convention, in my opinion, I went with New York Comic-Con. I feel like that con just had the most amount of pops that I actually wanted for my collection. I always take that into consideration when I'm looking at the different cons. Like, okay, counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think the count is technically 5 for that con too, of pops that are like pretty much a need for my collection. Maybe not just something that I want, but stuff that I actually need to add to different sets that I already collect. So it was close though, because I feel like all 3 of the big cons this year were pretty dang good. There was a good selection of pops for all of the cons, but I feel with New York Comic Con as well, some of those pops that I don't even care for too much had a lot of detail in them, so I definitely took that into consideration as well.
And to go along with that, the next category is best and worst convention exclusive pop. So one specific pop from those different conventions that we had mentioned. What is the worst? What is the best? So for the worst, I had, I guess, a bit of an honorable mention because I don't want to mention it right now. It's actually in the next category that we talk about after that, so I didn't want to repeat it twice. But for right now, I put the worst convention pop to be the Dig-'em Frog from San Diego Comic-Con. I think that for the Ad Icons lineup, that was an abomination. You could have had the debut of a brand new Ad Icon or something that actually kind of would have made sense instead of making a much worse version of an already pretty cool looking pop that we already had in the common version. Unless you weren't able to obtain the other Dig-'em Frog, yeah, okay, get this one, but if you had a choice, definitely get the common over this one. I think it was very pointless, and I think still, as we are recording this, is still on the Funko Shop website and probably will rot on there until the next 70% off sale for a Funniversary sale. And then for the best exclusive pop, I had a few choices, especially one I kind of mentioned a little bit ago, but I think actually it's in the same cases. It's actually kind of in the next category that I'm going to mention that pop. So for this case, the best pop in my opinion is the Mystical Elf from Yu-Gi-Oh! That was released for New York Comic Con. I think that pop was absolutely amazing. I think that it's still one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Comic Con exclusive pops they've ever done. Probably the best Yu-Gi-Oh pop they've done all year, and they just did a great job with what was given to them, because normally in like the card you only see like the top half, but then whoever designed it came up with a nice imaginary thought of like what the bottom half could look like of the dual monsters. So I really like that, and definitely is one of my favorite pops overall that I've bought in 2024. So yeah, best convention exclusive pop of 2024, Mystical Elf from Yu-Gi-Oh! New York Comic Con.
And now on to my worst convention exclusive. It's got to be the Kylo Ren from New York Comic Con, I believe, which is funny enough. But wow, this pop is not bad by any means, but it's the exact same reason why DK didn't like the Diggum Frog, which was my honorable mention. It was very close to making the list, but I felt like Kylo Ren was just a little bit worse in my opinion, because there was no real change. Like, I've seen this pop a million times, and there's been better versions, like that Lights and Sounds Kylo Ren. I think that one was pretty dang good. There's been unmasked versions of Kylo Ren that were better than this masked one, which just looks exactly the same as every other masked Kylo Ren that we've gotten. So for that reason, Kylo Ren was the worst of this year. And then moving on to the best con exclusive in my opinion. No surprise coming from me, but I have to go with I believe it was New York Comic Con as well, and I think it was limited to 1,000 or 1,500 pieces, I don't remember, but the flocked animal from the Muppets. That pop is amazing. I love it so much. It's going to be very, very hard for me to obtain because of the small piece count, but I gotta get it at some point. I need this pop. I have the original flocked animal, and this one is so cool with the drum set. I love it so much. It's such a great pop. There's been some other cool pops, of course, this year of stuff that I need for my collection, like, let's say, like the Kermit the Frog with the mug. I thought that was a really great one as well, but the animal, there's something about it. It's the chase for going to get it because of the piece count, and I need that pop.
So the next category is the best and worst multi-pack of 2024, and there weren't a lot of multi-packs to actually go through, but for the worst multi-pack, I had to go with the Luca 2-pack from D23 2024. This is what I alluded to in the last category, where I didn't want to mention it for the worst convention exclusive, because normally I don't like repeating pops for the most part for categories, but yeah, realistically, this would also be the worst convention exclusive pop of 2024. This just makes no sense. In what world does it make sense to have a metallic specification for not only a sea creature, but a human at the same time? It makes no sense. There's nothing about this pop that makes sense at all. I was excited for the prospect of a multi-pack for Luca when the leaks originally came out for D23, but for some reason, I was not expecting this, and I was not expecting this as a pop at all. So I was really disappointed. I did put an honorable mention for the Despicable Me 7-pack. That was Despicable Me BTS crossover, but at least that's something brand new. Unlike Luca pops just adding a specification. Bull, if you ask me. And then the best multi-pack, in my opinion, is the C2E2 exclusive Woody and Buzz Lightyear 2-pack. I think that pop was absolutely awesome, and surprisingly enough, for people that may not know, there's never been a Woody and Buzz Lightyear 2-pack ever in the Funko Pop lineup, besides back in the day when they did like the minis of pops that were like kind of 2-packs, but they weren't at the same time. So this was really like the first actual 4-inch Funko Pop 2-pack of Woody and Buzz Lightyear, and they're playing the video games from the second movie. It goes along with that Rex Deluxe Pop that was a box lunch exclusive. So that was really well done from Funko for this, and I cannot wait for the life of me of what they're going to do for Comic-Con exclusives for Toy Story in 2025, being the 30th anniversary, and knowing the leaks already for the possible wave of 30th anniversary Toy Story Pop. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me. The best multi-pack was the Woody and Buzz Lightyear 2-pack.
And now on to my worst and best multi-packs. Starting off with the worst, I went with the Connor Bedard 2-pack. And this isn't necessarily even terrible, but it just doesn't really make much sense to me why Connor Bedard is getting a 2-pack of himself, which is interesting. You have the home jersey and the away jersey, and thankfully they're not the same pose at least, but this just doesn't make sense. For basically the entirety of us having NHL Funko Pops, it's always been like singular pops of, okay, here's a home jersey, and then maybe a Canada exclusive of an away jersey, or vice versa. So now getting a 2-pack is just so weird, and I don't know, like Connor Bedard, of course, he's supposed to be this big new star, but just doesn't make sense. We never seen this for like a Sidney Crosby or an Alex Ovechkin, or even Connor McDavid, I don't think ever got a 2-pack as well. So that's why I went with Connor Bedard. I think that this easily just could have been 2 separate pops. And then moving on to the best, I also went with the C2E2 Woody and Buzz 2-pack. This is an amazing 2-pack. I love it so much. I think that it's so cool. I love the whole aspect of them playing video games. I love that it matches up with the Rex that we got, I believe, last year or maybe 2 years ago at this point. It seems like it's been a while. So it's just so cool. It's from one of my favorite movies of all time, being Toy Story 2. So I really enjoy this 2-pack. And that's one thing that I was going to mention, but DK actually did beat me to that point, is that, yeah, there's never been a Woody and Buzz 2-pack. So it's awesome to see them in one box in Funko form.
The next category is what we call the Overachiever and the Underachiever, one of our more unique categories for this podcast, because what we mean by that is, you know, when you walk into a retailer and you just see so many of the same characters, or when you look at an announcement, gosh, there's so many Homer Simpsons, there's so many Batmans. That's what this category is all about. What is the one character that Funko has made so many of in 2024 that there's so many of them and they're actually pretty decent? Or the Underachiever, which is just there's so many of them and they're mostly just absolute dog. So for the worst category being the Underachiever, I actually went with Iron Man. With further research, I knew it was going to come down to one of these superhero characters, because that's usually where you can easily go with, because they make so many superhero characters. But with the different pops that I've noticed, out of the, I believe, 6 or 7 pops that came out for Iron Man this year, 3 of them are blacklight specification versions of already existing molds, which that's already a big red flag. Then you actually had the Pop Classics with the whole tin and everything. Do you really need a Pop Classics for Iron Man? Not exactly. And then there's also Iron Man as Carnage, or Carnage as Iron Man, the Carnageized lineup, which I will probably get at some point when maybe the Pops go on clearance for $5, but just very unnecessary in my opinion. And yeah, they're going to go on clearance at some point. And I guess if you count like Groot as Iron Man for like the I Am Groot set, but I thought those pops were okay. Like, I give that one a bit of a pass. That's definitely better than a lot of Groots we've gotten in the last few years or so. But just those 3 blacklight pops for the Iron Man set is what made me decide to go with Iron Man instead of some of the other characters I consider putting in this category. And then the best, the Overachiever. I will say originally I wanted to go with Art the Clown, because I think all the pops they've done of him have been bangers, like not really a bad one. But I went with someone that I never thought I would add on the list, because I usually talk about this character. That's Freddy Funko. So I added Freddy Funko this year to the Overachiever, and a lot of examples of pops that I liked. I enjoyed the Farmer Freddy pop, where you had like the cardboard styling box, and even the insert inside was made of like the cardboard. Eddie Funko, of course, is a banger pop. The Headless Freddy Funko from New York Comic Con, and then even some of the Freddy Funkos released so far this year as terms to redeemables for NFTs. There's been a lot of cool Freddy Funko pops, to where I just couldn't deny that like Freddy Funko actually had some banger pops compared to most years, where it's just, let's slap a regular Freddy Funko head and put it on an existing body of someone and say like Freddy Funko as, let's say, Tweety or something, because I'm looking at a Tweety pop right now. So that was my only example, but there wasn't a lot of that this year. So this may be the only time I ever put Freddy Funko as an Overachiever for this list.
You know, I never would have thought of putting Freddy Funko as the Overachiever, but that makes so much sense. But moving on to my Underachiever before I get to my Overachiever, I think it's very apparent. I like this character, but I don't like the pops. It's Deadpool. Yeah, there's been a couple good Deadpool pops. I'm not going to deny that. Deadpool on the Zamboni, I thought that was hilarious. That's a great pop. But for the most part, all the Deadpool pops seem to be very, very similar. And then sometimes they branch out and they do silly things that just, I just don't like those little silly things that they do. Like, oh, it's Deadpool and he's holding flowers. So like, no one needs that. Why do you need that? You don't need 4 million Deadpools unless you are just a specific Deadpool collector. So yeah, I went with Deadpool again, and I think it makes sense with the whole Deadpool and Wolverine, but I'm not going to deny it. As much as I love Wolverine pops, Wolverine was definitely a thought in my head to put under the Underachiever, because a lot of the Wolverine pops this year haven't been so good, whereas in the past couple of years, we've gotten a lot of really banger Wolverine pops. And then moving on to my Overachiever, this is a character that I would have never thought that I would put in this list, but I think that this character had, I don't even know how many pops, but a good amount of pops, like probably close to 15 to 20 pops. For the most part, they were all really good, and that character is Stitch. I'm going with Stitch for my Overachiever. First of all, you have the Stitch in costume lineup, which is not something that I really collect. A lot of the costume pops I'm not super big on, even when it is stuff like the Looney Tunes set. but I still want to collect those because I like collecting all of the Looney Tunes Pops. But with these Stitch Pops and costumes, I think they're done so well. They look so good. Like the Stitch as like Beast, I'm thinking of, is a big example. That's a really awesome looking pop. And I also know someone who's like trying to collect all these, so it's kind of fun that I can go out and try to find them, and I'm not actually adding them to my collection, but I still get that thrill of the hunt of looking for these for someone else. And then of course you have that Stitch where it's like the concept of Stitch where he's like green and he has like the yellow costume. That pop is gorgeous. I love that pop so much. I would definitely consider adding that to my collection, considering I never got that 626 Stitch that I really wanted to get back in the day, but I never did. So this is like a close second, and this one just looks so great with the brand new molding. It's just an awesome pop.
The next category we have is the OMG and WTF moment of the year. You can definitely tell which one is considered the best and which one is the worst. So WTF moment of the year, I have to give it to the BTS Toy Story Pops. This one ticked me off so much because I couldn't give two shits about BTS, but I love Toy Story, and I can't believe that they mashed up something that I absolutely love, and it's like the number one thing that I collect pops for, but it's for something that I just don't give a crap about, being BTS. So that really ticks me off because it's a set that I'm on the fence of, do I want to buy any of these, or am I just like skipping out? Am I skipping or am I buying these? I don't exactly know. I may wait until these pops mostly go on clearance. Maybe I'll buy one or two when they first come out and then wait for the rest to go on clearance. Makes me mad. WTF Funko. And then the OMG moment of the year, in my opinion, has to be the April Fool's Funko NFT set, both the redeemables and the cards they pulled off. First one being the fact that they did the Burning Pack Redeemable Pop, where it's a spoof on the fact that, of course, a lot of NFT packs essentially get burned, quote unquote, so they actually made an inanimate object of a pack being on fire, and it had arms and legs with the nice fire base. I think that was absolutely hilarious. And then going off of the joke that at that point was almost a year old, but not quite, with one of the cards being the chicken sandwich that a lot of people actually got sick from when eating it at the Fun Days event in 2023. And the fact that they didn't make a redeemable for that at that point was really surprising, because I feel like if they did it for the potential Series 3 set that's coming out in 2025, I just think the joke is a little bit too late, in my opinion, to pull that off. But very hilarious how they really kind of like knew about these mistakes and they kind of laughed about it with this set. So that really made me laugh. So yeah, OMG Birding Pack, WTF, those BTS Toy Story Pops.
My WTF moment of 2024 is the announcement of the Bitty Pop Towns, more specifically the Quickie Mart with Bart Simpson with the squishy. Oh my god, I was so ticked off with this. I like it and I want it, but also, why the hell are we getting a Quickie Mart in a Bitty Pop form before we're getting an actual normal size Pop Towns, as well as that Bart as well? That's not a pop that's been made. It's been like exclusively made for the Bitty Town, and that could be a normal 4-inch pop that I would absolutely add to my ever-growing Simpsons collection. So yeah, it's a total WTF with that announcement, but it's still going to make it to my collection eventually. And then my oh my god moment of the year, I didn't actually go with like a pop announcement or anything like that. I actually went with the Funko Shop finally shipping to Canada. It's been needed for years. We've been so pissed off missing out on some different Funko Shop exclusives and then having to buy them through third parties or other retailers. But now finally Funko ships to Canada and we can pop ourselves. If that's something that we want to do on the website, we can buy anything basically that they have there, which is so cool. Definitely an oh my god moment where it was like, okay, finally, what stress relief, kind of like a weight off our shoulders that we can finally order from the Funko Shop into Canada.
The second last category of this podcast is the best and worst redeemable NFT pops. So, of course, the actual physical pops, the only ones that are eligible, are the ones that have made it to the hands of us collectors. So, while doing some research, the oldest eligible set that actually came out right at the beginning in January was the Dark Knight Series 1 set, and the newest set that has actually arrived in the hands of collectors as we are recording this podcast in late November is the Funimation and Cosplay Series 1 set. So unfortunately, sets like, let's say, Scooby-Doo and some sets after that that are close to the date of Funimation and Cosplay, unfortunately, those don't make it on the list because I'm sure that MD could have possibly wanted to put that Phantom Virus pop onto that list potentially. But then also there are some pops, like you guys may know if you are collectors of the Funko NFTs, like Transformers Series 2 and Star Wars Series 1 possibly being delayed until 2025 for release. So if we do this in a different format besides a podcast next year, that would be eligible for that list technically. So the worst redeemable pop, in my opinion, has to be the Grail Minnie Mouse from the Mickey and Friends set. I mentioned on a podcast we actually kicked off the year with about the best and worst, I guess, pops for each of the NFT sets for 2023, that the Minnie just doesn't feel like it's even an NFT pop at all. It just looks like it's a common pop that I can find at my local GameStop or Hot Topic. It just doesn't feel like it should be NFT. It doesn't have anything added to it. It just looks so regular, unlike, let's say, maybe even the royalty pop of like the band conductor Mickey, I believe it was. That does seem like it could be something NFT, but this just seems so bland and basic to where I feel like it was the worst. And then the best, I was really stumped about this because I could have went with the Burning Pack, and I could have went with either of the pops from the Back to the Future set because I had the entire master set. But I went with the Zombie Proto Royalty from Funko Ween Series 1. That pop is absolutely amazing. The detail with like the half-shown brain, him holding his one arm being the skeleton arm, absolutely awesome. It's glow in the dark, everything they did about that, and especially it being literally the best pop of that set with the whole theme of like zombie as something. This is just strictly a zombie dog.
So for the worst redeemable this year, I also went with that Minnie Mouse. And it's something that I've been pretty vocal about on the channel in the past, where with, let's say, con exclusives or NFT pops, there has to be something kind of special about the pop to make it make sense to be either an NFT pop or a con pop. And yeah, that Minnie Mouse just does not do it. It really does not. Which is definitely pretty upsetting considering a property like Mickey and Friends could be something where you can get some really cool stuff, but the Minnie was just a little too lackluster. And then the best pop, in my opinion, for the NFTs, I went with the Freddie Munson. Freddie Funko as Eddie Munson. I love this pop. I have it in my collection. It's gorgeous. I love it so much. It's so cool. But I almost did go with that Zombie Proto. I like went to write it down. I'm like, that's a pop that I can live without. I don't think I could have lived without this Freddie Munson. It was something that I knew I needed to get for my Stranger Things collection. Whereas with the Proto, I don't absolutely need it, but damn, is that ever a good pop. What a good honorable mention.
And the final category of this best and worst podcast to end it off is the best and worst Chase Funko Pop of 2024. And there weren't that many chases actually I found this year. I think if anything, they just turned other variants into exclusives. So it was kind of difficult to choose the best and it was kind of difficult to choose the worst, but I managed to find the best and worst in my opinion. So the worst Chase Pop of 2024 in my opinion is the Upper Deck exclusive Captain America, the pop that you were able to redeem when opening up, I guess, the physical card packs of what technically would be the concept of the Funko NFTs, and seeing if you could pull a redeemable pop, which at that point, you didn't even know what the redeemable was. It was just like, hey, it's going to be a Marvel pop. You're going to find out at some point what it is. And then it ended up being this stupid Captain America pop, where it's just got the shield in front of him, his eyes are closed, and the chase is just glow in the dark, and it's only like the top part of his attire. It wasn't the shield, it wasn't anything else, it was just one specific part. Take the time to Google search this pop if you don't know what it looks like. It's terrible. It is the worst chase of the year, and overall, even the common pop, I guess you could say, is just absolutely terrible. And then the best chase, in my opinion, had to be the Funko Shop exclusive Art the Clown from Terrifier. This pop is really cool, even though that all it is for the chase is just a bloody variant. It's the same molding, same pose and everything, but just adding that blood just makes it so much better than what the common would be. It is a pop where if I went went to go get a chase roulette of a couple of them, and all of them were commons, I'd be so disappointed. While, let's say if I had pulled the redeemable for the Upper Deck Captain America, I wouldn't be disappointed if I only got the common, because that chase is just awful. So this Art the Clown is absolutely amazing, especially the way they executed the blood. Sometimes Funko doesn't know how to execute blood properly and the amount to put, but they put a decent amount, and especially in the right spots, in my opinion, and it just looks absolutely creepy with like the mouth added to the pop also. So in my opinion, the best chase this year was Funko Shop exclusive Art the Clown that actually sold out.
And finally, my best and worst chases of the year. The worst, in my opinion, is the Supersonic. I don't like this. It's kind of like totally different pop for the chase because he's like totally in a different pose. But at the same time, it should have just been that pop as the common, and the common that we got probably shouldn't have been made where he's just standing. I like the pose for the chase, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. So for that reason, it is the worst of the year in my opinion. And then the best chase of the year. One of my favorite movies that I've seen this year, Beetlejuice. I'm going with the Beetlejuice chase because, this is so good. Of course, you have the common for Beetlejuice where he's standing in that outfit that he was wearing, and then the chase where he is spilling his guts. What a moment in the movie, and what a cool way to do that. The chase is pretty much totally different. I think the head might be the same, but the body is totally different. It's a pop that needed to be made, but it was an easy way to get a 2-for-1 that way. It's a great chase.
Anyways, guys, that is going to be the end of this edition of a Funko Popcast. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know down below on what you think is the best and worst of 2024. But we hope to see you guys on next week's edition of a Funko Popcast as a part of the Advent calendar of content. 1, 2, 3, I'm out of here.
The juice is loose. Peace in, peace out.